Good evening, everyone. As a topic which I'm taking up is on good governance, which is a little interdisciplinary subject. You'll find the way I have interpreted yoga is more from the meaning of yoga as something where you accomplish a particular objective. So yoga as a successful accomplishment of an objective. That's what how Bhagavad Gita, when we read it, says yoga karmasya kapsulam. So excellence in work is also yoga. So basically coming to good governance, recently the term governance and good governance are being increasingly used in development literature. Bad governance is being increasingly regarded as one of the root cause of all evil within our societies. Major donors and international financial institutions are increasingly basing their aids and loan on the condition that reforms that ensure good governance are undertaken. Thus, good governance is one of the prime focus of governments in most of the countries as on date. The United Nations defines good governance as being participatory, consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and the one which follows the rule of law. That's the definition which the United Nations has given for good governance. Coming to the topic of Yogakshemam, in India, the concept of the welfare state and good governance is very old. An exposition of the same can be found even in our oldest scriptures of the Vedas. The Shukla Yajurveda includes a prayer wherein the ruler prays, "Let my subjects be satisfied, my herds be satisfied, my people be satisfied, let not my people be needy." Similarly, in Manusmriti says that without a proper ruler, the anarchy will result in citizens living in fear, and thus kingship was instituted in the protection of the subjects. This is further attested by the Mahabharata in the Shanti Parva, which declares the protection of the subject as the most important kingly duties, and thus includes the various factors of good governance, ranging from punishing the criminals to supporting meritocracy, from ensuring security to enabling financial transactions as a means of ensuring this protection of the subjects. Chanakya defines a ruler's duty in the administration of the country in three folds. The first one being Raksha, or the protection of the state from external aggravations. The second one being Palana, or maintenance of law and order within the state. And the third, which we are talking about, is Yogakshema, or safeguarding of the welfare of the people. In other words, Yogakshema, or the welfare of the people, was the ultimate goal of any ruler or government, and good governance was a means to achieve this. But this exposition of Yogakshema, and thus of good governance, was not limited to material welfare only, that is, social, political, and economic welfare of the people only, but also included spiritual and moral well-being as well. Thus, writing about the Indian conception of Yogakshema as expounded by Chanakya, M. Shankaran in his book Yogakshema, the Indian model of welfare, states that Chanakya overreached the modern concept in that his Yogakshema aims at the all-round development, material as well as spiritual, of the society as well as of the individual. It involves the welfare of the poorest of the poor. The Chanakyan state ensures freedom, happiness, prosperity, and full-fledged development of human personality. Yogakshemam demanded a higher moral consciousness both at the elites and at the common people's level. According to Chanakya, a leader needs to be a Raja Rishi who is ever active in promoting the Yogakshema of the people who endures him to his people by enriching them and doing good to them. I'm not getting into details of Raja Rishi, as the same has been discussed yesterday in Dr. Shubha Joshi's presentation, where she spoke about Raja Rishi, Arishatvar Tyagena, and Indriya Jaya. Also, Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai in his presentation spoke about Anvikshiki, the art in which a king needs to be or the leader needs to be trained. So coming back to Yogakshema, the word Yogakshema is a compound made of yoga, which is successful accomplishment of an objective, and Shema, its powerful enjoyment. Thus, peaceful enjoyment of prosperity, that is the welfare of the people, is given as much importance as knowledge, self-control, and obedience of dharma. Coming to Yogakshema and Dharma, the concept of Yogakshema cannot be perceived in isolation. Welfare is driven by human actions, but all human actions do not by default lead to happiness and welfare. Thus, as the Bhagavad Gita says, one should learn to differentiate the action and outs to be performed and those action and outs to be avoided. And this division of action into obligation and prohibition is in turn rooted in the concept of dharma. Dharma, which literally means that which upholds, refers to those actions which will cause material welfare, happiness, and spiritual upliftment of an individual in the human context. And these dharmic actions have been enjoined as duties upon each person, so that by performance an entire society or a country achieves overall welfare and development. Thus, Yogaksheman of a nation is directly dependent upon the performance of the dharma by each individual, starting from the head of the state. When we say head of the state, we talk of governance, and governance being the prerogative of the government, and the head of the state of the government being the most important person who drives the whole government mechanism. His performance of his duties and his adherence to dharma becomes the most vital element of achieving Yogakshema. Thus, the popular saying states, Yatha Raja Tatha Praja. An able administrator who strictly adheres to dharma will implement proper measures to ensure the welfare and progress of people, whereas an incompetent adharmic ruler will push the nation into chaos and suffering. The head of the government cannot and should not act according to his own whims and fancies. His sole purpose and duty is to implement good governance by adherence of principles of dharma, so that the overall development of his citizens is achieved. Atri Smriti says that punishing the wicked, honoring the good, enriching the exchequer by just methods, being impartial towards litigants, and protecting the kingdom are the 5 yagnas to be performed by the ruler. Mahabharata, again in the Shanti Parva, says that a person becomes a king for protecting dharma and not for acting capriciously. Similarly, Manusmriti says a ruler who uses his power of ruling in a proper way, that is for the welfare of his citizens, will achieve all desired wealth and spiritual merits. On the other hand, a ruler who misuses his power for his selfish reasons will end up in destruction. In other words, an incompetent and adharmic person should never occupy the seat of government. For this reason, the Indian scriptures stress again and again regarding the requirements of a competent leader. Kautilya Arthashastra says that a ruler's happiness lies in the happiness of his subjects. In their welfare is his welfare. Whatever pleases him personally, he should not consider as good. Whatever makes his subjects happy, he should consider as good. So the sutra is Praja Sukhe Sukham Rajya, Praja Namte Hite Hitam. Mahabharata in the Shanti Parva says that a king should never abandon righteousness and should always be rooted in it. On the other hand, Manusmriti declares a person who is weak, ignorant, greedy, without discrimination of right and wrong, and attached to sensual desires as being unfit to govern. Dharma, in its twin role of duties and righteousness, is the very basis of ensuring good governance and welfare of everyone. Good governance is a qualitative term. It can be analyzed using certain parameters which can give definitive information regarding the state of governance. The World Bank determinants of good governance include factors like political accountability, transparency, democracy, legal framework, and independent judiciary. Most of these factors could also be observed in ancient Indian concept of good governance, that is Yogakshemam. Arthashastra by itself extensively deals with law and order, political and bureaucratic accountability, the establishment of rule of law, elaborated legal framework, prevention of corruption, human resource management, and meritocracy. Modern day models of governance, what we see is that the ancient Indian model of good governance, which can be more properly be called a dharmic model of Yogakshemam, contains within itself most of the elements that are present in the modern day models. But the glaring difference is in the fact that Yogakshemam model perceives welfare in a wholesome, integral manner, whereas the modern models prescribe development as an activity that involves accumulation of wealth without any reference to ecology and ethical aspect of an individual and the society. Thus, elements of ethics and spirituality play no role in modern models, whereas they are at the very center of Yogakshemam model, which perceives governance in a more integral manner, catering to the aspects of society. The Yogakshemam model not only enables a society to raise its overall quality of life on the mundane level, but also assists to raise the level of consciousness on a universal level. It aims to provide full freedom to every citizen to carry out his dharmic duties, the Swadharma, without hindrance, or that everyone can attain overall welfare and happiness in their life. This it does by positioning the entire process of good governance and welfare state on the firm foundation of duties. This duty-based narrative ensures that welfare states are not a privilege. They are not an entitlement that could be misused the way it is being done in the present day modern rights-based narrative. Instead, the welfare state and good governance are made the prerogative of every citizen, and the rural's sole purpose is to serve his citizens, and he is bound by the same obligations, same duties as his citizens. The only difference a ruler and a citizen is that the magnitude and scope of these duties in case of the ruler is many times greater than in the case of a normal citizen. The fact ethics like truth, honesty, non-violence, etc. have been enumerated as Samanya Dharma or universal duties in the Indian scriptures. On the other hand, though professional ethics is stressed in the modern models of governance, ethics as an obligation or duty are still missing. We can conclude to say that there is a complete conceptual difference between the modern models of governance and Yogakshemam. And the distinctive features of Yogakshemam comes in, like you can say, dharma versus religion, universality versus selectivity, duties versus rights, self versus ego, self-employment versus state employment, and overall, the role of family in the welfare makes it an wholesome, integral model. Thank you.